Now it gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Nick from San Ramon.
Thank you. My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. A lot of happy people in the room tonight. What a beautiful thing we have here. You know, there's a really powerful attraction that brings us to these rooms. Some intangible presence. And I felt that at my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And it's truly a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Teresa for extending me this very gracious privilege of being here tonight. And I'd like to thank Tracy for tireless work on putting together a large dinner party. Quite a lot of work, and I'd like to thank her. Did a superb job. And this sanctuary, what a beautiful place. About a week ago, Mason and I were down in San Diego. I didn't point it out to him, but we were driving by an old church. And they had out on a marquee these two service messages. The morning service was Jesus Walks on Water. And the PM service was Looking for Jesus. Kind of caught my eye. And you know, it's always nice standing in front of one of these things and not having to enter a plea. You relate, huh? You know, in the 50s and 60s, alcoholism had such a stigma. You know, we were outcasts and throwaways. And earlier in that, we were thrown in asylums and locked up. And today we have opportunities for sobriety. What a God-given gift we have. And back then, anonymity was a serious thing. Nobody wanted anybody to know they were in AA. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous is a phenomenon. It's the fastest growing spiritual movement on the planet. Now everybody wants to get in. We have movie stars and filmmakers and directors and all these people. You know, a lot of famous drunks. You know, I love the story of Winston Churchill. He was a heck of a drunk. They called him Winnie. And Lady Astor, you know, this is the House of Commons, House of Lords. They had a big dinner party in his honor. And, you know, he was reaching across the table, sloshing drinks. And very witty man, he'd point out, guy'd look at somewhere, and he'd grab the drink. Finally, Lady Astor turned to him and said, Winnie, you're drunk. And, you know, Winston Churchill was very witty. He said, Madam, you are ugly. And tomorrow morning when I get up, I'll be sober. And Winnie, if you were my husband, I would put poison in your soup. Madam, if I were your husband, I'd drink it. A lot of drunks. Do you realize a stockbroker and a doctor, two broken down drunks, found each other June 1935? And one began to talk to the other, and the message of alcoholics began to grow. And those two drunks did a 12-step program, almost miraculous in its inception, its growth, to what we have today. You know what we have today? You know how many 12-step programs are out there? I'm talking about registered 12-step programs. There's 238 registered 12-step programs for every problem under the sun. I mean, you got AA, NA, DA, BA, CA, SLAA, GA. I mean, you got parents without children. And my favorite group, sex without partners. Don't laugh, that's a very happy group. No complications, you know. You don't have to dress up. So many. I'm waiting for the next meetings like for sumo wrestlers. I mean, who knows? You know, the way they dress, they're just asking for it, you know. Let me tell you, I was born and raised in the Hawaiian Islands. And everything in my life was wonderful until I was 2. It was around then I figured out I was born into this dysfunctional. The Hawaiians have a word for it. It's called papuli, it means crazy. You know, I don't pull any punches. And there was a lot of love and a lot of craziness, a lot of drinking, a lot of, you know, this family, we would sit around in large circles and psychologically abuse each other until somebody had a seizure. Then we'd have pie. Everything's fine in this family. What a place to grow up. And you know, when you grow up, you have certain memories. And you know, I've told this with my mother in the audience. And the thing I remember most about my mother was her hair. You know, as a kid growing up, I watched my mother, you know, back in the 50s, the women used to tease their hair. You know. And she cut it, she dyed it, she permed it, she permed it, she cut it, she dyed it, she dyed it, she cut it, she permed it. She permed it, she cut it, she dyed it. And, you know, most women were teasing their hair. My mother was pissing hers off. I walk in the bathroom, there's 35 pounds of hairspray in there. I see a fly stuck in midair, you know. And there's Mom weaving with the wine glass doing her hair, you know. And, you know, my father, I don't know what I can tell you about him. He was a classic periodic alcoholic. At Thursday, 5 o'clock bell would go off, and we wouldn't see him Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Who knows? Sometimes be gone for 3 days, a week, a day and a half. You know, it's just, who knows? He was just classic periodic. But he did have a good heart. He tried to put food on the table, clothes on our back. And he tried to spend a little quality time with me. We'd go for walks, go look for the car. You think it's that way, Dad? He hit me one time with the Buick. Never forget that. And you know, growing up, I don't know about you, but I got a lot of mixed messages. You know, I was a bright, literal kid. I mean, I had a photographic memory. I didn't have any film in the camera, but I had a photographic memory. And I would interpret things logically. And some of these mixed messages, like, you know, look at me when I'm talking to you. Don't look at me with that face. How about shut your mouth and eat? Ever try that one, literally? Well, my favorite was, you know, you cut your legs off with that lawnmower, don't come running to me. What a family to grow up in. And, you know, we had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins, and I had a bunch of crazy cousins, Donnie and Benny and, you know, Joey and those guys. And my cousin Donnie was the oldest. He saw this article in a magazine for a penis enlarger. So he made us save all our money. We sent off the money, and they mailed us a magnifying glass. First introduction to capitalism. But what a place to grow up in, I tell you. A lot of drinking, a lot of fun. I still remember my first dysfunctional girlfriend. I asked her, am I the first? She said, you could be, you look familiar. What a place to grow up, I'll tell you. So here I am, I'm trying to find ways to stop drinking. Drinking age was 18. By the time I was 14, 15, 16, I was out on the street corners drinking, and downtown on Hotel and River Street, where kids should not be, and just doing the thing. And back then they had, I think they only had one type of non-alcoholic drink, near beer. You remember near beer? My cousin says, you ought to drink near beer because you get crazy when you drink. I said, near beer? That's like going on a date with your sister. What do you do? Go drink a six-pack of near beer and get in a fake fight? You know? I went back to drinking the real thing because that's the only thing that worked for me. The only thing that really just kicked it into gear. And what a beautiful night, Saturday night, man. We could be, where were you some Saturday nights? Where was I? Remember that what they call the porcelain altar? You remember that struggle? Geez. American Standard. The bathroom be swirling around, and I'd have my cheek on the cold porcelain, gazing into the shimmering waters, hoping for some meaningful answer to surface. And if you're like me, you had to detox from both ends. Required a series of split-second decisions. No room for error here. And then, I'd go to a friend's house. I had some friends in Palo Valley. I've known them for years, and they bought a new place. They had new carpets. They had new furniture. I'd go over there drunk. And I'm throwing up on a brand new rug and a brand new carpet, brand new couch, and they leading me down the room, or the hallway into the bathroom, and there I am again. Just, doing my thing in the toilet. You ever get your head stuck below the toilet ring like that? My head is way down there. I decided to turn, look up, I saw these spots. And I thought, what a bunch of pigs. Somewhere along the line, this is going ahead a little bit, but I did meet a wonderful, incredible human being who shared this alcoholism, the insanity of the disease with me for years, and also recovery. It's my wife, Robbie. She's here tonight. And what a blessing she's been in my life, I'll tell you. And when I was drinking, I came home this one night, and the house is all locked up, everything's all dark. And so, how you get a little shaky? And I thought I had some, I was sure, I had some cabin still whiskeys, 100 proof, behind a dryer in the garage. Of course, everything's locked up, but I got a way to sneak in the garage. I get into the garage, I reach behind that dryer. You know how that feels when you reach that bottle? And oh, yes, there it is. You know, and I turn the light off and look at that golden nectar shining in the light, you know, and I take a couple of shots, and I was overdrank, 4 or 5 shots in a row, and I vomited on the floor. Now, my dog Sunshine was out there. Sunshine came over and lapped it up. I drank some more and he lapped it up some more, and I drank some more, he lapped it up. Pretty soon we're howling and singing in the moon, you know. We're just having a hell of a time. And then it happened. The door from the kitchen into the garage opened up, and there she stood, Mussolini's granddaughter. She had that big old thick buffalo robe on that went from the neck to the ankles. Man, not tonight, buddy. And I will never, ever forget what she said. She said, "Sunshine, you get in this house right now." That was the end of my social drinking. So here I am. I'm blind drunk for 2 weeks down Olive Park, Hotel Street. Just walking in the maze, unable to get sober, unable to do much of anything. Lost another job. And I'm on a park bench in the morning. And I feel somebody tapping me on the shoulder, and I get up and I look up and I see this very compassionate, smiling face. I didn't know who he was. He was a long-time sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I had a bunch of vomit on me. I hadn't had a bath 3 or 4 days. He's one of those intuitive guys, you know. And that's all he did. He did that. There's so much power in that finger. Now, if he was saying, "Let's go to Alcoholics Anonymous," I'd have never got there. But he did this thing, so I got up and I followed him because I thought he was going to buy me something to drink. We went past all the, you know, the Hubba Hubba and the Swing Club and all these bars, and he'd stayed 10 or 15 feet in front of me. And I followed him, and where the hell is this guy going? Oh, there's a bank, and there's a liquor store. We passed that up. Made a turn, went up some stairs. The long and short of it is he took me to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I walked in the room, and there's a bunch of people, you know, AA meetings, before the meetings, people are standing around, they're kissing and they're hugging. Looked like an orgy with morals. I don't know what to make of this group. And it was the 11th step meeting. We were talking about God consciousness. And it was a powerful meeting. I can't tell you the content of the meeting, but the quality of the meeting is what penetrated, because I looked at the eyes of the people in the room, and they were radiant, and there was laughter. There was laughter, and there was clarity. And I'll tell you, it was a really up meeting about the will of God and increasing conscious contact. And I don't remember the content, but I do remember that intangible, powerful presence in that room. And I wanted what they had. I wanted dearly what they had. And the only thing I remember hearing was 3 very powerful words. And if you knew, those words are, "Keep coming back." And Charlie, in his own inimitable way, he gave me a copy of the big book. And he told me, "You no drink. You go to meeting, you read the big book." And it didn't look like a very big book, looked like a normal book. I said, okay. I was a part-time genius anyway, so. I lived on the other side of the islands. I was one of the original young people of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is November 1969. So I take this book home, and I started to read this book. And what amazed me so much was how did that book know so much about how I felt. It was incredible. So I went back to the meeting, and there's Charlie. And he said, what do you think of Big Book? Loaded question for a part-time genius. I said, well, Charlie, it seems to display a conspicuous absence of intelligence. It manifests unmitigated infantilism. It's irresponsible and incompetent. And I noted, Charlie, a salient lack of perspicuity. And Charlie went to the 4th grade, by the way. And he went, don't drink. You go to meeting. You read the big book again. So I took the book home and I read the book again. And now Charlie was a wise old Chinaman. What he did is he sent this guy named Mokiata. Mokiata was 6'10". This guy had arms bigger than my head. This guy's shoulders were in 2 different time zones. You know, and Charlie would call me up and say, Moki will pick you up at 7:30. Moki had problem with anger. Moki had problem with patience. You better be ready. And I said, Charlie, this guy's angry, he's crazy, he's impatient. Why are you sending him to pick me up? When he see you, he will feel better. I had no idea what he was talking about. But I was ready. And he'd show up at my door, and so we went to a lot of meetings. And you know, the old-timers in the islands, they put their arms around me. They put their arms around me, and they gathered me in. And it was into action immediately, and into steps immediately. And I got into the rhythm of sober living. 12-stepping drunks on the street and in the park where they got me. And what an incredible experience. Now, through a set of circumstances, I went through geographical, wound up in Southern California. And the first thing to do was to check in with Alcoholics Anonymous. If you do a geographical, you know, I had a work-related, employment-related, and I was in Southern California, and so I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I don't know why my alcoholism tells me this. You may feel the same, I don't know. I sat in a room like another drunk. I was an average, what am I? Another average drunk. You know, I don't get to thank the Academy tonight, you know. I'm just another drunk. And I sat in the room, and, you know, my feelings are that if you treat me special, then I can feel average. But if you treat me average, I feel rejected. I don't know why that is. So I continued meetings, got into corporate America, got into working, got into being busy and doing life. And this happens so easily for us. If you're new here, you're going to hear a lot of stories like this. And there came upon me so quickly about 11 months where I hadn't attended a meeting. And then life hit squarely, hard. I'm not going to the circumstances, but a lot of stuff. And the book talks about the insanity that precedes the drink. And I found myself at a 6 o'clock bar, and I picked up that drink. I had about 4 years. And I picked up that drink, and I was gone. Gone. And then the alcoholic mind. I have 2. I have 7. I'll get drunk tonight. I'll get drunk this week. I'll get drunk this month. You know what? I'll just get drunk. And everything that transpired in my life for a period of 8 years happened in the rooms that I had heard about in Alcoholics Anonymous. I fell through a bottom. Every county and every place that I lived to, I wound up in the county jail. I wound up, by the time my drink was over, 52 drunk in Publix. I was a drunk tank drunk. I'm talking about the times I got charged, not the times they let me go. You know, did a geographical found my way up into the Bay Area. I used to drink in the Tenderloin, down by 9th, by the Greyhound bus depot. It's like a who's who in mental health down there. And the winters were cold like it is this winter. Oh. And we used to carry around a pocket rocket, you know. And the fog would roll in the city. I got out on another drunk, wandering the streets at 2 and 3 in the morning. The fog could barely see, and I could barely see the sidewalk. I was somewhere down Fisherman's Wharf or wherever the hell I was. And I could hear the foghorns out on the water. Loser. Make them voices go away. I want to tell you how it ended because I want to talk about recovery. I wound up in Highland Hospital in Oakland, hemorrhaging. Now, I'd been in and out of hospitals for about 2 years, clipped by cars, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I was dying of alcoholism. By the way, I went through 6 or 7 treatment centers in Southern California, met Dr. Paul O., met Admiral Persh from the Navy who sobered up the senators. I mean, I had the best help I could possibly receive. But somehow the door was closed. You know, help me, but not too much. I'm in pain, but stay away. You know, that sick isolationism we have. And there I was in Highland Hospital in the emergency room. I was bleeding, and they went to work on me for about 4 or 5 hours in the emergency room. And they put me upstairs, and upstairs, within 24 hours, I had a grand mal seizure, a series of seizures, and they shot me full of Dilantin. 72 hours later, where you normally begin to feel better, my alcoholism took a turn for the worst. It's called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. And that's the thing that kills alcoholics. There's somebody tonight in our country dying of that syndrome. It's the end stage of alcoholism. And that is full-blown auditory and visual hallucinations. They put me in 4-point restraints. And they consulted this beautiful African-American physician. What a godsend he was. He was an expert. And he came and he looked at the chart. Because he shot me with 150 milligrams of Valium. You know, 3 or 4 hours later, shot me with 150 milligrams of Librium. They couldn't pull me out of it. And he said, you better hook him up with an IV alcohol drip or you're going to lose him. And that's what they did. They hooked me up with pharmaceutically pure ethanol. Right? And they, you know, put the drip on. And of all the medications and all the tubes and everything that I had gone, that one line of ethanol, my body responded to. My body always responded to alcohol. Up, down, sideways. And I could feel a coming back to life. I could feel some semblance of sanity. And when I began to gain consciousness, there I was in another hospital, another gurney. But there was a difference. I could feel that alcohol. So I began to look at the bottles up there. And I followed it all the way down to the left. There was the ethanol drip, you know, going down. And I looked at the dripper. and it was going way too slow for me. Now, I had thrashed my way enough to get loose to turn the thing up. And that's exactly what I did. It took me a little time, but I got that notch going. So going to any lengths. And that thing started dripping, and I started feeling good. And you know, all this stuff is monitored, and all the beepers went off, and in comes the ICU nurse, and she didn't make a judgment call. She didn't scold me. She didn't do any of those things. She just came in and she went like this. She went, she whacked my hand. I was like, and then she said something that changed my life. She said, "Isn't life sacred? Why are you throwing yours away?" And she said it with compassion. She said it non-judgmentally. She said it from 20 plus years of nursing sick and dying people. Isn't life sacred? Why are you throwing yours away? And I had to think, why? What am I doing here? I can't even die on the installment plan. I failed everything. And then I had blood in my urine. I had swollen varices. I had so many complications going on. And on top of that, my appendix broke. I don't know, maybe somewhere during the seizure or something, so I had a fever of 105. Then they said, you know, you need emergency surgery because you have this poison, toxins leaking in your system, and if you don't get it out, you're not going to be here. And that's what they did. They took me upstairs with an incredible surgery team. I had a renal specialist, a liver specialist, because so many things were failing with me. But they did that surgery. And May 23rd, 1982, at around 3 in the morning, everything shut down. Everything shut down. Whoever I was, whatever I used to be, that wounded animal walking on the streets, had died in that room. I had what's called an out-of-body experience, a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening. I do not have the words to transmit a transcendent experience because it's simply not about words. I can tell you this much. It shifted me from a place where I lived all my life, a place called problem consciousness. I was a chronic malcontent. I lived in, everything was a conflict. It wasn't I'd turn it into a conflict. I lived in problem consciousness. May 23rd, 1982, at the lowest point in my life. God doesn't reward when you do good things and you're way up there. He comes when you're at the lowest point in your life, at least for me. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. He shifted me. It's like this paradigm shift of consciousness into a place where I live now called solution consciousness. And solution consciousness is very simple, very clear. It's thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. How can I serve? How can I serve? If you be an alcoholic of my type, a deep, heartfelt gratitude of prayer for the thankfulness that we have everything laid in our lap. And then the ability and the desire to serve, to give it away. That's what our program teaches here. Now, I was beyond blessed to get up and walk out of the hospital a week and a half or so later. Got home in the back room, jaundice and yellow, with tubes hanging out of me and draining. And 2 men from Alcoholics Anonymous came by and spent a little time with me because I couldn't go immediately to a meeting, but they came within another week or so. And they picked me up and I went to Tri-Valley Fellowship in Pleasanton. Someday in the month of June, don't remember. Took a chair, as I've done so many times before, sat in a room, as I had done many times before. The difference here was I could hear with my hearing. I could see with my seeing. I couldn't see and I couldn't hear for a long time. I was dying from what we call hardening of the attitudes. But somehow I was shattered open. And when I was sitting in that room, to be like a blind man restored to vision, someone who was deaf all his life could now hear. I tuned in. And the message that I heard was a message of hope. There's hope in these rooms. If you knew there's hope in these rooms, if you've been around going through something very difficult, there's hope in these rooms. Hope stands for hearing other people's experiences. We sit around the tables, one beggar feeding another. That's our program. One drunk talking to another. It's not a me program, it's a we program. You know, in these first 90 days, my head and consciousness was still just, spacey doesn't describe it. You know, and my friend Bill Mason came and he put his arm around me. You know, he is another drunk tank drunk. He related. And I think, you know, if he hadn't done that and put his arm around me and gathered me in and gave me some direction, I probably wouldn't be here tonight. You know, because I was at a place where I was teachable. And he told me things like, Nick, I want you to make 2 AA phone calls every day. I said, Mason, I don't know anybody. He said, you got my number, hang up and call me back. And, you know, I'd go to the meeting, sit at the edge and be snobby. He says, I want you to go up and shake hands, introduce yourself. Meet 2 strangers, 2 people, introduce yourself. You know, make some eye contact. I mean, eye contact, there's a fine line between eye contact and the piercing stare of a psychopath, you know. But I did those things that I needed to do. The name of our program is Show Up. Ultimately simple. If you're new here, step 1 is the problem. Step 2 is the solution. Step 3 is the commitment to pursue the solution. What's our solution? Our book tells us what our solution is. Our solution's God. God is or he isn't. You either go with God or you don't. God is everything or he's nothing. In our book, What a Design, you know, page 83, spiritual life is not a theory. It has to be lived. I don't know if you noticed that awesome line at the bottom of page 84. Love and tolerance is our code. I have to ask myself daily, am I living up to that code? You get challenged, you go to AA business meetings. Every last character defect comes flying out of me. I want to kill everybody in the room. But I go back to that line. On page 85, what do we have? A daily reprieve, that's all we get. When we get up in the morning, it's a daily reprieve because we have to renew every morning when I get up. I promise I do this. It just escapes me. I don't know where it came from, God-given. But the first thing I do when I get up, there's a prayer that comes out of me. And it says, God, I don't know what your will is for me today. I just pray to be part of it. See, I learned to align myself. I learned to surrender, learn to submit. But it's only for 24 hours, because when I get up the next morning, it's a renewal. It's a renewal. It's easy to let go of that, rest on our laurels. It's when we get knocked off. So it's an incredible program. You know, in the first 90 days, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I just kind of was hanging out. And these guys, they suggested, they opened that page that talks about, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. We have fun. We're not a glum lot here. So they took me water skiing. 97 days sober. Water skiing. You know, I found myself out there in the lake in the water. My feet are in the boards. I'm hanging on to the stick, which is attached to the rope, which is attached to the boat that Jack built. But this is not a normal boat. I'm looking at the engine. This thing got twin jet carbine injectors and huge scoop on the top. This thing is sucking in birds and babies and houses. And I'm in the water holding on to this thing for recreational purposes. Now, I'm a little apprehensive about my personal safety. But the guys in the boat, they can't hear me. They just see my face, which to them appears to say, you know, please abuse me at a high rate of speed. I have no common sense. That thing, wow. That thing went, whoa, ripped the bones right out of my body. I mean, you can look back and see a Caucasian wetsuit floating where I used to be. And they're dragging me out of there. Water's going into my nostrils, exiting my lower orifices. I'm talking reverse enema colon holiday time here. Hey, look, he got up on his stomach this time. And they're dragging me around the lake for half an hour. You know me, I'm an alcoholic. I ain't gonna let go. So they throw me back in the boat. Hey, dude, you feel clean? You feel clean? I wouldn't be any cleaner if I was freebase and Metamucil. So last time I went water skiing with those guys. So I went sulking back at the fellowship, you know, hanging out with me. I like to stay in my room, get caught up on my worrying. You know, I like to read a lot. I remember reading this pamphlet about silent heart attacks. And I'm reading this thing with a great deal of concentration. And it says, the most prominent symptom is no pain. And I'm thinking, I don't have any pain. It's probably getting worse. Then the phone would ring, you know, hey, let's go to a meeting. Oh, thank you. And off to a meeting we go. You know, in early sobriety, I love to talk about early sobriety because it's a lot about turning corners. And I had a beautiful boy that's here tonight. He's about 6 years old then. And just a little guy, you know. He's 6'4" now. He can hunt geese with a rake. You know? Anyway, when he was a little tyke, he brought home this block of wood. I'm clueless, I'm gone in drunk tanks and just, And so I start reading the directions, and it's a piece of pine wood. And we carve the thing up. We carve it up and put the wheels on it. We're making a little race car. Painted it blue with the numbers, and we talked. And I was watching him. I was looking at him. And he was so clear and so real. It was so beautiful. And I never forget that. So we put the wheels on it. And I thought, well, that's it, He says, oh, no, there's a thing Friday night down at the gymnasium. What? So I take him, we go down to the gymnasium. Here's the other fathers and sons there with their carved up pine wood derby. And they're going to race. This is like competition. I just want to go home. I don't want to compete. I just want to take my boy and go home. We carved it up. That's enough. But you taught me about going to any lengths. You tugged at me. You tugged at my heart. And then, I looked at my son, and he had his feet turned in, and he had his hand in his pocket, and he had his head down, and his body was moving. He was picking up my pain, my fear. Kids are so intuitive. And perhaps he had some of his own. And we just both stood there just terrified. Now what they do is they have to weigh the car, make sure it weighs a certain amount. So we went up, we stood in line. By the way, these other guys are engineers, and you're alcoholic, you make something that looks pretty good, then you see other people's stuff. And our beautiful blue car turned into an alcoholic car all of a sudden. See a bunch of wine bottles and vodka bottles in the back, and a bunch of bourbon bumps around it, And we went up and we weighed the car, and it was too light. Oh, thank you. See ya. I'm going to go home. And really, I'm turning around, ready to go home. And then you're tugging at me again, going to any lengths. Because in my pocket, I had a chip. And I need a chip, So I took that chip out and I went back in line. I go, hey, could you tape this on? Guy goes, sure. So they took my 98 coin, they taped it on the thing. And they weighed it. And it was still too light. And I went, in my car, I went. And I'm walking out the door, ready to go. I feel okay. I did everything I could do, went to every length. I just want to get out of the building. But as God works in your life, and I know He works in mine, there was another sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous in that room. And he came over and he gave me his 8-year chip. He said, try that, Nick. So back in line I stood, we went, took that little pine wood car and taped that other coin on, and the weight was perfect. And I thought, oh my God, now we got a race. Now we're going to get demolished. And these big slick tracks, And there's Blue with the 2 AA chips on top. Came zooming down, beat the hell out of everybody, just went over and over and over. Thank you. And my son came out of that crouch, and he started to leap and jump high. And he's been jumping and leaping high ever since. What a life-changing event. Incredible life-changing event. You know, I've had great opportunity to run a detox for many years. The Drunks on the Street, and I worked for a long time. I didn't have any vacation. And I had over a month, 5 weeks. And I was tired of drunks and Al-Anon and, you know, it's just 24-hour detox in community centers and just full program. And I decided I went to the other side of the world, get away from drunks. So I booked a trip to India. And I got on a Singapore Airlines had 747, brand new fleet of planes they bought, and I got on that plane. Packed flight, 438, you know, loaded, just no room. And I sat in my seat, and I went with a friend from the program, John from Hayward. And I sat down, the guy was sitting by the window, and I looked over at him, and he looked over at me, and he said, where you headed, buddy? I thought, 438 seats on this train, and God puts me next to a drunk. I'm trying to get away from them. Well, about 2 hours into the flight, you know, we had the big book out and drinking coffee and going through the steps. A guy named Harry Kay from Hong Kong, he has a business in Oakland, and you know, he's a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not the messenger, it's the message. It's the message. In India, I had this incredible experience in walking up the side of the street. And there was a bunch of people in front of me. They were Australian, you could tell by their accent. And all of a sudden they split, they went in different directions. And all of a sudden in front of me there was something you read about and you hear about, but you never ever see, I never ever saw. It was a leper. And he was begging for money. And he was grotesque. He had black rags and dying, rotting flesh, and had his arms out like this. And I turned to run too, because that's terrifying. But you tugged at me again. And I turned around and I gave him 40 rupees, which is not much in American money, but it's a lot in Indian money. And he said, thank you. He spoke English. His name was Sukhidra. And every late afternoon, I'd go up that street and I would run into Sukhidra. And we'd have conversation. And I'd give him 40, 50 rupees. And he asked me, what do you do in America? And I had difficulty. How are you going to explain you run a detox, take care of drunks? So I told him, you know, I run a detox, alcoholics. He said Bangla or something to that effect, which meant alcohol. I said, Bangla killed Sukhidra's uncle. And I followed him one day, just to see where he went. And he hobbled down a few blocks. And he went to a vendor, and he put the money on one side of the bench. The guy put fruit and rice, and on the other side, then they'd switch. He'd go get the money. Sukhidra would get the food. And then he would hobble. I'd follow him another couple of blocks. Do you know what he was doing? There were lepers that could not walk, that lived in dilapidated, poisonous conditions. And he would take them fruit and rice and feed them. I'm overpaid. Far overpaid. And blessed. I got back to our beautiful country which we live in, and I walked down the supermarket aisles and I looked at the fruit and the cans, and is so filled with gratitude, the blessings that have been put in my life. And I go back to meetings and I see you. And it's so heartwarming. You know, I used to wear a t-shirt on the street when I drank. And it said, you know, I hate other people. You don't attract a crowd that way. Today, an encounter with another human being is a sacred encounter. It really is for me. It's an absolutely sacred encounter. One drunk talking to another. You know, I'm so blessed with what we have inside and outside these rooms. You know, I have a beautiful uncle who had passed on some time ago. And, you know, my father had gotten drunk one time and he roughed me up a little bit. I got a cut on my forehead. I was in the emergency room. They were stitching me up. And it wasn't so much the pain in my head as the pain in my throat. And he took me for a ride to the Kaina Point, which is way on the other side of the island. And there was an envelope in the glove compartment, and he told me, hang on to it, hang on to it. And so I hung on to it. And when we got to Kaina Point, we came to the largest tree I've ever seen in my life, banyan tree. Branches went out for, seemed like miles. And at sunset, thousands of birds came in and sat in these branches. And my uncle's sixth grade education said, that thing you're holding in your hand's a banyan seed. You plant that in the earth and that will grow into a tree. And God planted you here in our family. And one day you're going to have a tree that you come across with thousands of friends in your life. Thousands of friends. And you'll be able to join them and to fly. What an intuitive and beautiful man he was. I'm going to close here. And I close with this story I love so much about the sharecroppers. These sharecroppers, they do not have a whole lot of anything. They live in a dilapidated place. They work the soil, grow, harvest, go into town, buy more seed, and eke out a poverty level meeting. One year they had a little bit of extra grain, a little bit of extra. And they went to town and they had an old Sears catalog, and they opened the Sears catalog. They just had enough money for a handheld mirror. This handheld mirror was all they had. They didn't have screens on the house. I mean, these sharecroppers, there's nothing. So the mother took the order, went home. A couple of days later on horseback, postman comes, delivers the package. She opens the package. She holds the mirror up to her face and she looks at herself. And you know what she says? She says to her husband, John, thank you, John, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of how beautiful I am. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for your confidence in me. And John took the mirror, you know, and he looked at himself and said, yeah, I'm kind of ruggedly handsome myself, you know. And she says, yes, you are. And they have the little 9-year-old girl. She came running in. And she grabbed that mirror. And she looked at herself and saw herself clearly for the first time. And she said, Mommy, Mommy, I have your curly hair. Daddy, I have your eyes. I'm beautiful too. Now, this family didn't have a whole lot, but they had a lot of love. And they were standing together, holding each other in a group hug, tears running down their face. There was a lot of love in that family. The real thing. What they did not want to happen was the little boy who was 7. Little boys have so much energy. He came running around the corner before anybody knew it, jumped in the middle, grabbed that mirror. And see what happened to him when he was 3, 4 years old the family mule had kicked him in the face. It disfigured him. He was grotesque. He was just grotesquely ugly. But before anybody knew it, he jumped right in the middle. He grabbed that mirror and he looked in that mirror. And this wound went through his soul. And he shrieked out and he said, "Dad, I'm ugly. I'm ugly. I'm so ugly." And he started to tremble and to shake and cry. And his father was rubbing his shoulders. And he said, "Dad, have I always been like this?" And his father nodded and said, "Yes, son, you have." And he said, "And you love me? How can you love me like this, Dad?" He said, "I love you because you're mine, son. I love you because you're mine. And I promise you every morning when I get up and I put a little sacred time away and I go through the steps, those steps are my mirror. And I see my defects of character and my shortcomings. I see my ugliness. And I asked the Father, "Father, have I always been like this?" And he said, "Yes, yes." And I said, "Do you love me, Father? You love me?" And every day he tells me, "Yes, I love you." And I ask him, "Why? Why do you love me?" And he reminds me every day in so many ways. And he tells me every morning, "I love you because you're mine." Make no mistake about this, you and I are the sons and the daughters of the same Father. We all came from the same source. My spiritual sponsor asked me to live up with this. I'll pass this on. It's so needed. Think about it. Love everyone. Love everyone to the very best of your ability. And if you're not able to do that, then in the very least, do not harm them. It's been a blessing being here. God bless.